Hello everyone, this is Eye on Africa for Friday, August 20th. Here are the headlines. Judges in Kenya shoot down President Uhuru Kenyatta's plans to change the constitution. We'll go live to Nairobi in just a moment. Burkina Faso is in mourning after a major terror attack kills 80 people, including 65 civilians. More evidence of a dire situation in the Sahel. We'll speak to Professor of Political Science Douglas Yates about what the future holds for the region. And a popular group of street musicians from the DRC is back with new music and a court case. We'll have that story coming up. But first, Kenya's Court of Appeals has rejected a bid by the government to make major changes to the country's constitution. This confirmed an earlier ruling by the High Court that the way the reforms had been introduced were illegal. For more, let's go live to Reuben Kiama, who joins us from Nairobi. Reuben, good evening. This is a major blow to President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Good evening to you. Yes, indeed, it's quite a landmark ruling. Indeed, the judgment this evening here in Nairobi has been received with mixed reactions, some calling it a win for the Kenyan constitution, and some also saying the rule of law has prevailed. Actually, minutes just before the judgment was delivered, opposition leader Raila Odinga issued a statement saying, and I quote, "It is likely that this is not the end of the conversation, and the parties involved will each make their own determination on how to proceed after the decision delivered today." So you can see Raila Odinga is almost ruling out is moved to go to the Supreme Court, but at the same time, some are also, especially from the government side, say that they do not agree with the Court of Appeals ruling, and that they will make a determination on whether or not to proceed to the Supreme Court after reading the full judgment next week.
Reuben, do we have any kind of idea about how the government may react in the more medium term ahead of the elections?
At this juncture, because the judges were quite clear on why they termed this constitutional review process an illegality. So the government has nothing really to do. But probably we have seen indications that some of Kenyatta's lawyers have argued that they might be looking at the full judgment in detail, and probably, if need be, they might go ahead and file an appeal at the Supreme Court, which is Kenya's highest court.
All right, Reuben Kiama with the latest from Nairobi. Reuben, thank you very much. The Ethiopian government is denying accusations by the United States that authorities are blocking aid from making its way to the Tigray region. In a statement, the chief of U.S. aid claims the flow of humanitarian assistance is too slow, that hundreds of thousands there face famine, and that food will soon run out, all allegedly because of the Ethiopian government. A spokesperson for Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed claimed that was not the case. The situation in the Tigray has been dire since a bloody conflict began late last year. And at a press conference in New York, the UN Secretary General said Ethiopians had suffered too much.
To give peace a chance, I'm making an appeal for action on three fronts. First, I call on all parties to immediately cease hostilities. Second, unrestricted humanitarian access everywhere must be guaranteed, together with the re-establishment of public services in all affected areas. And third, conditions must be created to allow for the start of an Ethiopian-led political dialogue to find a solution for the crisis.
Burkina Faso entered 3 days of national mourning this Friday following a major terror attack earlier this week. The death toll now stands at 80, including 65 civilians. The other victims include members of the army, and this week's attack was just the third in 2 weeks. Yinka Oyetare has more.
The injured crowd this hospital in Dori as Burkina Faso comes to terms with yet another jihadist attack.
5 patients ont été reçus aux urgences, dont un cas grave. Il y avait également un enfant. Actuellement, il y a 4 malades qui ont été transférés dans le service de chirurgie. Il reste 1 malade dans le service des urgences.
Dozens were killed in the ambush Wednesday as Islamist militants raided a civilian convoy escorted by the military. The assault took place near the town of Goganjdi. It's located in the notorious three-border zone where Burkina Faso meets Mali and Niger. It's an area with a strong Al-Qaeda and ISIS presence. Flags are being flown at half-mast and the country has entered 3 days of national mourning.
Que dire, c'est encore une fois présenter les condoléances aux familles de ceux qui nous ont devancés dans l'au-delà. C'est encore une fois souhaiter prompt rétablissement aux blessés.
This is the third major attack on troops in the past 2 weeks. There is growing resentment among locals who say the military is poorly equipped and ill-trained.
Well, as we've mentioned, this is just the latest in a slew of attacks in Burkina Faso and the greater Sahel region. Let's take a few steps back and look at the general situation. For that, we bring in Douglas Yates, professor of political science. Douglas, thank you very much for being here. As we've said, the security situation in the Sahel has gone from bad to worse. Is there an end in sight?
If by end we mean a victory of either side, I don't believe so. I don't think that after all of these years, France has proven it has the ability to eradicate terrorism from the Sahel. There's been about 600 terrorists killed or imprisoned, and there's new terrorists appearing all the time. But it also doesn't appear that the Islamic State of the Greater Sahel or Jenim, the Al-Qaeda affiliate, are at all prepared to take the capital cities and try to run these countries. So I don't see victory for either side. But what I do see is a wearing down process, a fatigue process, where the terrorist groups might decide to assign a ceasefire, and France might try to reposition itself. The threat to close down Barkhane is already one indication that fatigue has come in.
Before we came on set, we were talking a little bit about the situation there and the casualty numbers, relatively low on either side in terms of either terrorists or France or other, military groups, but really huge in terms of civilian casualties. How do we stop the carnage among civilians? How can we protect them better?
Right, because there's been mission creep. This is a counterterrorism military operation that now has sort of embarked on the responsibility to protect. You got 29 million people in need of assistance and protection. So clearly, if France wants to do something, it's going to need to transform a counterterrorism mission into a mission to driving all around the Three Frontiers region, trying to protect every small village. Not possible. Signing a ceasefire with the terrorists would be the best option to get the terrorists to take responsibility for patrolling those areas. We had an example of that in northern Mali with the Tuareg rebels, who then assumed upon themselves to prevent terrorist acts. But right now, the two major terrorist groups, the Al-Qaeda affiliate and ISIS affiliate groups, are fighting over the Three Frontiers region. Until that war is settled between those two groups, there's no one to sign a ceasefire with.
All right, Douglas Yates, professor of political science. Always a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you very much. Finally, on tonight's Eye on Africa, a group of disabled singers in Kinshasa that shot to fame 10 years ago is plotting a comeback with the release of new music and a court case. Staff Bende Belili, that's the name of the group, was featured in a documentary that was screened at the Cannes Film Festival in 2010, and they say they never got their cut of the profits. Camille Delec has the story.
It was a sound that broke down barriers and challenged stereotypes. 10 years later, Congolese music group Staff Bende Belili jams together again where it all began, in the streets of Kinshasa.
Nous avons encore un album qu'on a préparé, donc bientôt nous serons en Europe, si Dieu le veut.
The group was propelled to fame after they were featured in a documentary shown at Cannes in 2010. 2 albums and a world tour followed, but the dream died in 2013 when the band split up. They got back together again 5 years later and released a new album in 2019. Some of the members must now depend on the generosity of others to survive.
Moi, j'ai vu avec les amis, voilà, vos musiciens sont en ville là-bas en train de faire la mendicité, alors qu'ils ont des droits qui peuvent changer leur vie.
Some band members want the producers of the documentary that made them famous to pay up. They were supposed to get 10% of the profits, but are still waiting and are planning legal action.
Je comprends que pour eux, c'est un petit peu une bouée, c'est le moment, ils pensent qu'on a fait des millions, qu'on roule carrosse et que eux sont là en galère à Kinshasa. Ce qui est pas le cas. Évidemment, dès que les choses sont clarifiées, le pourcentage stipulé dans le papier sera respecté.
In the meantime, the band continues to write new songs in the Congolese language of Lingala. They may be low on funds, but certainly not on inspiration.
And that wraps up this edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to France 24.